What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to 2025, the dumpster fire that it is already off to. Wow, I'm anxious about the rest of the year if the first week and a half we're already looking the way that we are. But anyways, let's not go off on that tangent. Let's keep it positive. So new year, new to me pattern. I have been seeing this bag pattern float around for ages. I did make one at full size several months ago for my sister. She wanted a baby bag and she requested a tote style bag. And then I was browsing Instagram, as one does, and I saw Jordan Porter. I don't know if y'all follow her, but she's at jordanporter.handmade, and she posted a mini version of this that she had gotten the idea from at Tippy Totes. So I had to make one myself, and may I present to you a 70% Oxbow Tote. Isn't it so darling? It's so freaking cute. It's tiny, but it's not, I mean, it's tiny compared to the original. The original is absolutely massive. The overnight size, which is what I made for my sister for a baby bag. Perfect for that, by the way. I have not made the regular, so I just did the overnight and then I just shrunk it. Honey, I shrunk the purse and made it 70%. So it's absolutely adorable. It's a perfect like everyday style bag. It's just kind of hard to fathom how big the overnight is to this. It feels tiny, but it's not. It's a great size. So I didn't do a whole lot of changes. I did amend the front pocket because I wanted it to be wider to allow for a cell phone to fit in there. And I will say, just like a standard phone, mine sticks up just a touch out of this top pocket just to give you a little bit of an idea of the size of the bag. And so I did that on the front, and then I also did a slip on the back. I used 1.5 inch webbing. I do think the next time I make one of these, I will do 1 inch webbing, because I think for the size of the bag that it might correspond a little better. But for all intents and purposes, I think it looks really cute. I love this webbing. It's from Georgia Girl Stitches. I talk about it later in the video. The cork, this is Melanie from Fabric Funhouse. I'm not sure if she still has any, but if she does, it's a lovely print. I absolutely adore that print. And then mustard cork as well. And don't forget, you can use code SONAR10 for 10% off your first order from fabricfunhouse.com. That's where I get all my cork the majority of the time. I do dabble in other places, but 98% of the time I get it from Talia at Fabric Funhouse. Yep, so I used my strap attachments for my side anchors here. I have Dutchess pulls from Zipper Valley, and I did a striped, it's like the oatmeal stripe zipper. It coordinates perfectly with everything. I did this fun cork overlay on the strap, and then these beautiful lines along the bottom. I used a really thick, I think it's probably Tex 80 thread. I'm sure I'll say it later in the video, but in this mustard gold color. I got that from Wizardry, and it is absolutely divine. I love that thread so much. And on the inside, I can't recall if the original pattern has an interior zip pocket. I want to say it doesn't, because most of Noodlehead patterns don't, but I added one. I always do. So I added a zipper pocket in here, and then instead of having a birth hole in the bottom and having to hand stitch that or have an exposed seam, an exposed stitch line, I opted to do the double birth method, which again, all of that will come later in the video. The Rugged and Handmade woven tag is from Lauren over at Mormino. And then look, I got my cute little, I got some Sonar woven tags. So whenever you open the bag, you can read it perfectly. I put it in crooked, but that makes sense. I mean, can't do anything perfect, right? And then I used Juicy Juice. I don't remember the line of fabric, but I have several of his designs. I just love them so much, but I think that this like taupey brown just really coordinates very well with everything else. And yeah, so there's the inside of the bucket. I think that's about it. I go over all the modifications and changes that I make throughout the video, and yeah, without further ado, I hope that you enjoy. Be sure to, if you're at any point in the video, if you are enjoying it, be sure to hit the like button, toss a subscribe click in there if you want to. If you want to be notified whenever my videos go live, you can turn on your notifications. I think it says something to do with the bell, something down below. You know, all the things. You can join my Patreon. You can follow me wherever. You know the drill. All right, let's get to sewing. Before we get started, let's do a quick materials overview. I have chosen this Melanie cork. This is from Fabric Funhouse. This will be my front slip pocket. And then I am using this Juicy Juice print. I don't remember exactly which line it's from, maybe Spectrum, I'm not sure, but all of his prints are amazing. I have all of my linings prepped and ready to go. I am using Decaville Light on those. I did not interface the cork pockets, but I did interface my cork main panels here. I'm using this mustard yellow, and I went ahead and added some fusible foam to the back of both pieces. I was extra careful to trim out about 1/2 inch from all of the perimeters to do my best to keep it out of the seams when I'm sewing. I have the 2 matching linings here as well. And then finally I have the base. So this base is the lining. I have Decaville Light. Now for the exterior, I want to do something a little bit different. I want a nice stiff bottom in this bag. So what I'm going to do is I cut a piece of Craft Tex and I'm going to attach it. And I'm also going to layer a piece of Decaville Light on top of that just to seal everything together. Now this Craft Tex, you'll see, same as my Flex Foam, I kept it a half of an inch so that I didn't sew it in my seams later on. It's especially important with Craft Tex just because trying to turn and have nice flat edges, it's going to be a nightmare if that is in the seams. So I'm just using some double stick tape here, and I am going to lay my Craft Tex into place. Ta-da. And then I'm going to take my Decaville Light and sticky side down, or fusible side down, I'm going to lay it in place on top of my Craft Tex. And what that will do is it's going to seal these edges over here where that gap is and just add an extra layer of stiffness. So I'm going to go ahead and interface this into place. Everything all interfaced, and you can see what it does. This interfacing the Decaville Light, it really compresses the Craft Tex into place, and now I'm just positive that it's not going to shift or move around on me at all. Whenever I'm adding a really stiff base like that, I do like to at least do a layer of like SF101 or something light that is fusible that will seal those edges up. Okay, so next up, I need to cut out an interior zipper facing. Now, because I made this pattern a lot smaller, I'm kind of having to measure these random odds and ends. So I decided on making my zipper opening 6 inches wide. So that means I need to cut out a 7-inch wide zipper overlay. So I finally have my zipper overlays back in stock. If you haven't seen them, it comes with the main piece here, and then it has different attachments. And you can get a 9-inch zipper opening, 8-inch zipper opening, and 7-inch zipper opening just by clicking. Well, they don't really click, but they seat together on their centers right there. So they slide together. This one is a misprint. That's why the template or the rivet holes are down here. Normally they're up here, but it does come with like a double 1-inch rivet setting and 1.5 inch there. So I'm going to be using this to cut out my 7-inch zipper template. And I'm going to use brown cork. This will be the only other callback to brown cork that I use in this bag aside from the base here. So I'm going to just lay it. Well, let me just double check, make sure there aren't any little nicks. I have a bad habit of, yep, see, like that. I have a bad habit of cutting stuff without checking to see if there's any little nips from cutting something else using that same piece of cork. It's very frustrating when you're making a wallet and then you get to, say, adding the exterior, and what do you know? There's a huge nick in the exterior as you're sewing. You just take everything apart. It's so annoying. All right, so I'm just going to swivel. Now this little tool can be a little cumbersome, not cumbersome, but it can be a little finicky to work with at first because it's not the most structured here in the center. But if you keep your fingers on either side, I find that it works great. I also like it because it has the pre-cut nipped in the corners, so that way you don't have to guess at the sizing. going to get this one here. And then now I'm going to use this to trace out the interior box. Okay, and then now I can use those lines there for trimming with my ruler. And I always like to do the long straight edges with my rotary blade, and then I like to come back with my sharp scissors and I will nip into these points here, or these corners rather, and cut that short edge. There we go. Now our overlay is all ready to go. And then to coordinate with that, I did go ahead and I cut out a 7-inch wide by 12-inch for my zipper lining, my zipper pocket lining, and then I interfaced that in total. All right, now let's chat hardware and notions. I have my 2 zippers cut, so I have a 7-inch zipper for my interior pocket. And then I just guesstimated based on the width of the smaller panel. I overshot to give myself some trim room here, but I cut a 13-inch zipper, and I have 2 zipper pulls here. These are the Duchess pulls by Zipper Valley. I have 1 zipper end cap. She does tell you in the pattern, she shows you how to finish it with fabric like cork, leather, vinyl, or regular fabric, so you can follow those directions if you don't have this hardware. And then also for the strap attachments, I personally am not a fan of the 2 D-rings that stick out of the side panels. I always think they look like ears. So I'm going to go with my big D-ring hardware, so that way it sits nice and flush against the side of the bag. And when the strap is not attached, then this D-ring can lay flat and, you know, be out of sight. And then for the webbing, I'm using this gorgeous webbing from Georgia Girl Stitches. It is so nice and soft, but it's structured. It holds its shape really well. I will be folding it in half to create rolled handles. And yeah, I'm just really excited to work with this. I have not worked with this, not brand, what am I trying to say? I haven't worked with this style yet. I do love all of her webbings, but this one is just, it's shocking how soft it is, because it looks like it would, because the weave is so nice and tight, it looks like it would be stiffer, but it's not. So the name of that webbing is called the Aria webbing. She has tons of different colors, but this particular color is called Kombucha, and it coordinates with this mustard cork perfectly. So I think it's going to be a nice visual. It's going to be a lot of yellow, but we're going to go for it. The only hardware that I'm missing is my adjustable strap hardware, and that's because it just hasn't arrived yet, but I have a 1.5-inch slide adjuster and then 2 lobster clasps. And the lobster clasp will allow the strap to be removable, and then they will attach here on the sides to those. But the bag will have straps, handle straps on the front and back as well. All right, so we are ready for some prep work. Before we got too deep into this pattern, I did want to touch base on the pockets. And as you can see, the original Oxbow pocket, this is obviously cut in half, you cut it on the fold, it's significantly smaller. Now, the reason I wanted to amend this is because I wanted a phone to be able to slip in and out of this pocket very easily when the bag was completed. And with making the pocket 70%, it just made it really tight. So because I'm using 1.5-inch webbing, it would take up presumably about 3/4 of an inch here on the side. It would have made this top edge here just about 4 inches wide. And I wanted something a little bit easier, maybe a hand to fit, you know. That was my line of thinking. That was my rationale whenever I enlarged it. I don't mind this, but I used an old receipt. So I made, what I did is from this right hand side here, I measured 3/4 inches wider, and then I just kind of extended the curve, and I changed the shape of it just a touch, because if I followed this original curve, it had it ending a lot higher, and then it was a lot closer to the top of the panel here, and I didn't want that. So I played with the shape of this pocket. Feel free to do the same. You can leave it as is, totally up to you. But I just wanted to let you know in case you got to wondering like, oh, why does her pocket look a little different than mine? That's why, because I changed the shape, I messed with it. All right, moving on. So to get these going, we're gonna lay these right sides together and then just clip into place. Now, if you're new here, welcome. My channel is chaotic and offbeat. I do not really follow patterns. I use them more of as a suggestion, which this will be the first time that I say it in this video. It very well may not be the last. I believe that patterns are a jumping off point for you to take your creativity and run. Same goes with my patterns, and I apply that same ethos to every pattern that I try. Point in case I was like, oh, I want a different pocket. So yeah, you do what you want. I'm just here as a pattern shaman, and we're just gonna have fun and make these together. So on that note, I'm not gonna be following the pattern to a T, and I will be working out of order. I like to do all of my prep work first, so that's what we're doing. So we've got these prepped ready to go. If you want to quilt your bottom, this would be the time to do it. You can go, like in the pattern, Anna has you do straight across lines, which actually sounds really nice and easy. You could do diamonds, you could do X's, you could do whatever you want. I think I am just going to do lines straight down the bottom. I never do that. Maybe I'll get a little funky and do some down here. I guess we'll find out once I get over there. But because I'm going to just be using my presser feet as my guideline, I'm not going to worry about marking lines through. But if you are quilting and you're doing some sort of ornate design, highly suggest marking that out before we go. And on the quilting tip, if you are using foam, feel free to quilt your front panels. That would look quite nice. I do suggest cutting a little bit larger than what the end pattern piece size will be, because whenever you quilt, inevitably it does kind of shrink everything, pulls everything in just a hair. So I'm going to leave mine as is, and yeah, you can do whatever you want. Next up on the prep list, I did go ahead, I added some Mod Podge around all of my perimeter of my zipper overlay as well as the interior here. And I'm going to lay this on one of my interior pieces so that I can get this panel started as well. So what I'm going to do is locate my tape. Where did it go? Okay, here it is. So I'm going to be using 1/4" tape. This is from Wawak. It is rippable tape, but it's not their hyper stick. It is not that. I like this rippable tape for zipper insertion, things of that nature. But if I am, sorry about that loud car that just went by. Whenever I stuck this interfacing the stabilizer to the base here, I use the hyper stick. If it's something that I know I'm going to want permanent, I definitely use hyper stick because it is a lot stickier. You cannot rip that though. This is nice because it's quick. Okay, so make sure your ends are stuck and then peel the backing off. Okay, so we need to lay this where we want it. I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go because we amended the sizing. You have to kind of amend everything in the pattern. So I'm just going to lay this here. I'm going to lay it 1.5 inches down from this top line. First things first, I need to find my center. Oh, sorry about the dogs. So I'm just going to find my center here by aligning my ruler on my straight lines. And then I'm aligning my top edge at 1.25. And then now I can count over and see, I can count each side here and ensure that this is centered. So I'm going to have about 2.5 inches on each side. Before I apply pressure and stick this down, I am going to slide my tag under here. This is the Rugged and Handmade tag from Mormino. It was a part of the tag subscriptions that they do up there. Okay. So now that is ready to go. I am going to take this, my base, And then my 2 pockets over to my machine, and I'm going to stitch everything. For these pockets, all I'm going to do is follow this curve here. I'm going to cut into the curve and then flip right side out and top stitch to finish these pockets off. I'm using Tex 80 thread from Wizardry, and this is a really nice gold color here. I have a size 18 needle and size 4.5 stitch length. I will be stitching at a 1/4 inch seam allowance unless I'm top stitching, and then that'll be 1/8. To trim into this curve, I'm going to be using pinking shears. Oof, look how off that is. I'm going to fix that curve real quick, because that is janky. There we go. Okay, back to what I was saying. I'm going to use pinking shears to snip into this, so that way it gives... The little triangles here allow this curve to ease in on itself when it's flipped right side out. Otherwise, you would just have to come in and do little snips, and I feel like pinking shears just kind of, it's a 2-for-1. You get to trim your seam allowance down, and it nips into the curve to allow for a better top stitch. I'm just going to take this and roll it between my fingertips, and then on these up curves here, push on them and roll it out. If you want, you can do a second stitching for you. I'm just going to stick with 1, but this is what you should be looking like here. I love how this bottom came out. I never do just straight lines like that, and I think it looks really, really crisp. If you watched the video, you saw how I just put a hard ruler on the left side, and then you could see I started up here every time, and I would go 2 stitches, and then I would pivot, and I would move the ruler, and I would ensure that this left side here stayed in line with that ruler. So that way I got these nice straight crisp lines, and I just love the way that it came out. A lot of them even line up. Their exact needle holes are in perfect line, perfect unison. So, okay, that one's done. Now my pockets are done. They are prepped and ready to go. But first I'm going to finish prepping this interior section here. And while I was sewing this, it dawned on me that the reason that I had to come up with the layout of all of this is because in Anna's pattern, in the Oxbow pattern, she doesn't have a zipper pocket on the inside. She does a slip pocket. So of course I couldn't reference the pattern for that. But if you've been following me for any amount of time, you know that my preference is one interior zipper pocket. So that is what I'm choosing to do. Now the pattern, the way that it is written, we are going to turn through the bottom, and then she tells you to hand stitch the hole closed. And I will not be doing that. So I will be turning through the bottom, but then I will be pulling the bottom up through my zipper pocket here and using that as like a double berth method to avoid any interior stitch lines, the exposed stitch lines. I could whip stitch it closed by hand, but let's be honest, I'm not going to do that. To finish this off, we just need to slice down the center, trim out all of this, and get our zipper put into place. Okay, going to add some more double stick tape here. I'm going to put it just above where I trimmed all of this lining out of the way, just out of the stitch line, just to alleviate some extra, you know, all that extra stickiness and tackiness there. My needles don't generally have issues with that, but if yours do, then highly suggest to keep this all out of your way while you're stitching. Okay, so we need to gather our zipper tape here and put our pull on. I don't use these strip zippers very often. I've had this in my stash for quite some time now. I have heard of some people having some issues with them because they will fray. And my only suggestion is do not snip into any zipper tape, but especially this zipper tape, because the striped look is all a different weaving pattern. That's what's creating this tape. And it's all held together by this very end here, this little white trim. If you snip into that, you're opening this up to a fray just like this. So don't do it. Don't cut into any zipper tape really, but especially on these stripe zippers. Okay, so let's get this set into here. Going to just eyeball it, make sure that it's nice and straight before I apply pressure. All right, now for the interior pocket panel, we have 8" wide by 6" tall and 8" wide by 5.5" tall. And then I interfaced it, leaving a 1/2 inch open along the bottom to help to reduce bulk later along in the process when the bag is fully constructed. Right, so once you get your tape peeled, you're going to take the smaller of the two, and the side that has the interfacing that goes all the way to the top edge, you're going to lay that, center it on your overlay. Oh, okay. Be helpful if the tape's stuck. So center it just like so, and what I did is I aligned the raw edge of my lining piece to the bottom edge of my zipper tape. So this is ready to go. I'm going to take this with me because we will finish this once we're over there. But to finish prepping, I'm going to lay my 2 pocket pieces here along the front. Now, if you want to, you can use your pattern piece. Probably, I'm just gonna go ahead and do that as well. Make it a lot easier to find your center, but all that to say, find your center. On the bottom, I don't think we need it at the top. So I'm gonna do that for both. There we go. And then I'm also going to mark my center on my pocket. Okay, so after we marked our centers, before I clip these into place, I'm going to attach my tag on one of my pockets here. I think I'm going to attach it on this one. And so you just want to be careful when you're attaching your tag to the pocket. You want to pull your lining away. I'm going to attach mine just about 1.5 up from this bottom edge here. Now, if you look at my ruler, it looks like 1.25, but that's because I'm laying my prongs on the edge of my ruler. I'm not using that as my measurement. So I'm just finding my center here visually. So yeah, basically you can install it wherever the HE double hockey sticks that you want. It's just where I'm putting mine. Another good spot is above the pocket on the main panel. But the reason I am opting for this location is because I think that when you're using the pocket and you're going in and out of it, my tag is so raised. It's, you know, it's a rather thick tag. It's like 1/8 of an inch thick. I don't want it to get caught or to catch on your hand or your fingers or your phone or whatever is going into that pocket. So that's the method to my madness. One of the many madness lanes that I uphold. Okay, so now we're just going to find our centers and align our bottom edge, clip into place. And repeat for the other panel. Okay. Now when we go to the machine, I'm just going to stitch down these two sides here to base this into place. I might get crazy and go down across the bottom and then back up. I guess we'll find out. Do that for both. And then we're going to complete our interior pocket. Now we're going to leave long tails. I like to tie off when I'm using contrast thread. If you notice, I did it whenever I was stitching the perimeter here, and it just makes for a nice seamless look. But so to get started, we're just going to stitch right across the bottom, and I'm starting about 1/8 of an inch past where my zipper overlay ends. So that way, whenever I do my top stitch around this top section, it all lines up and looks like it's one seamless box. I'm going to pull to the back here and tie off. All right, once you get everything tied off and how you want it, you're going to fold this piece down and finger press it nice and well, get it out of the way, and then peel your paper off the back of this tape, and then take your remaining pocket lining, the side that has the interfacing that goes all the way to the top, and we are going to, I'm keeping an eye on my edges here, and I'm going to lay this raw edge on the top of the zipper tape. Just like that. So in a perfect world, what should happen is these two should meet up down here, leaving a nice 1/2 inch section to sew your birthing hole closed. It's a little off, but it's going to be just fine. All right, pull some tails here. And I'm going to marry the needle into this hole over here and then stitch up, across, and then back down. Okay, we're going to pull to the back and tie off. Okay, once you get everything situated, take a gander at how nice it all looks. And then now from the front, we're going to take the right side, fold it up and over, expose your zipper teeth here. We're going to stitch down and pivot here on the very bottom, and we're going to stop just about 3/4 of an inch or so in from here, skip this whole section, and do the same thing on this side. We're going to leave a birthing hole. I am going to just trim up just ever so slightly down here. And you don't need to trim up very far. I'm just trimming up because this is where we're going to be flipping and having our birthing hole later on. And then of course your threads, get those out of the way. There we go. So now our interior zipper pocket is complete. Looks fantastic, if I do say so myself. And I do. Next step in our process is we get to add our webbing to our front and back panel. And the webbing is going to cover this pocket, the raw edge here, encase all of that, and just really finish off the front and back. Nothing really else to say about that. So I decided that I wanted my handles to be 33 inches long, and that gives me just a little bit of leeway. I'm gonna have some runway coming off the edge here. Because this is woven, it does have a tendency to fray, and it will fray very quickly. So if there's a lot of tension on the bottom of the bag, I don't want it to ever be an issue where if I line it up directly with the bottom, that with a lot of tension and pulling on the bottom of the bag, I don't want this to pop through. So I like to leave a little bit of an overhang here. So I think that 33 is a really nice like shoulder crook length, and then it'll have the crossbody strap to be a shoulder strap as well later on. So I think having just shoulder crook or elbow crook handles will be really nice on this size bag. So whenever I'm working with woven webbing, I like to tape the very bottoms to alleviate as much of this fraying as possible while I'm actively working with it. So I just take some just regular old packing tape, and I'm overlapping it about 1/2 inch. I'm just going to tape it just like that on all 4 edges here. Great. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to create an edge, a rolled edge, like a faux rolled handle. Gosh, that was challenging for me to spit out. So I'm going to find my center. I'm gonna grab some clips before I start this process, but I'm going to find my center, and then I'm just going to do this a real basic way here. So I'm gonna line up my center fold on one of my ruler lines, and then remember which one it is. And then now I know that that's my center. Another thing that I like to do is you can put a clip here, just something that will remind you that that's your center. In the pattern, I believe she says to count over and make this a 10-inch rolled handle, but I think because of the size of the bag, I'm gonna do 8 inches. So I'm going to count 4 inches from my center line here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I like to use clips, and I put a clip right on the outside of whatever that measurement is, because I don't want to mark on this. You're not going to be able to remove the silver pen, and I don't have any other type of pen that'll work to create a mark. You can try washi tape. In my experience, it always just falls off. So I just like to use a clip, and I know that the inside edge of the clip is where my edge is. Here's my center mark. So 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to bounce that one down there, and then repeat that on this piece. Now, because we already have one, we can just use this like so. Okay, so what we're going to do is you just fold on itself, line up your long edges here, your open edge. Just make sure everything is nice and straight. If you want to, you can definitely put a piece of tubing in here or cording, a narrow rope if you really want that rounded effect. But I have found this just folding it in half to be just as effective. It gives a great look. And so now I know that I need to start and stop right here on the inside of my clips. I'm just going to repeat this folding over here. Okay, now I'm going to pop to the machine, and I'm just going to stitch using 1/8 seam allowance just down this open edge here, back stitching very well at beginning and end. All right, here they are. They look great. I love the length up here. And then per the pattern, the next step would be to go ahead and attach them to our panels, our front panels here. But I actually think I'm gonna stray a little bit farther, and I'm going to baste my zipper into place on the main panel prior to adding these pieces of webbing, just because it'll just give us one less thing to contend with whenever we're creating our zipper sandwich. So I think if I just baste it to the exterior panels, it'll make it so much easier to just toss the linings on whenever we get to that step. So I'm going to do that now. In doing this, we do need to ensure that we start them on opposite sides of the panels. Otherwise, whenever they're together, they will not zip. The zipper will not zip. So that is something that we need to consider. This is going to be my front panel because it has my tag. So I'm going to start here on my left side. I'm just lining up. I'm not going to pull my zipper totally apart yet. Also, by the way, if you hear chewing, it's Joppa. He's chewing on a bone. So apologies about that. So I'm just going to peel about 2 to 3 inches here. I'm going to line this up right here on my 1-inch line and then clip that into place. And then now that I know that this is the proper layout, I can peel the other side and then lining up my panel here, I can match it on this side. I'm going to clip this into place, and then we're going to take this over to the machine. We're going to be creating a 90-degree turn here. So if you have a better method, go for it. What I have started doing is I clip it to where I need it to be. I stitch several times to lock it into place. And then once I get the stitches locked into place, you can kind of just work it over on the machine to create that 90-degree stitch instead of trying to burn the edges and pin the edges and do all of those different assorted ways to create this 90-degree fold. This has been the biggest change for me. I think it's so easy, but yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's get to it. With our zipper tape lined up here, what I'm going to do is at about 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to start stitching the tape into place. I'm going to back stitch well. And then once I have it stuck, I'm just going to leave my needle down and lift my presser foot up and then carefully grab my tape and fold it, like pull it back toward myself, line up the raw edges here, and then you see where it just automatically starts to make that 90-degree fold. You can help it to be crisper if you'd like. And then I'm just going to stitch right along, basting this into place. I'm keeping it pulled taut, but not super duper tight. I don't want it to pull on the panel itself, but I do want it to not be wavy or stretchy. Now I did forget, as I do, to mark my end point here, so I'm just going to stop it really early. Now that I've got the zipper basted into place, this is more than enough runway for me to have something to work with later on, so I think that that is totally fine. And I'm just going to repeat that over here. Now this side is a little bit trickier because you need to stitch from the opposite side of the panel. So I'm going to lock the stitches in place first, and then I'll turn the entire panel around. Okay, so this is what it looks like once you get them locked in. And then I'm going to put my needle back down, raise my foot up, and then same thing here. So they should be opposite starting points here. And that is so whenever they're laid right sides together, you have the 2 open ends and the 2 closed ends. All right, now that we've gotten the zipper basted into place, I feel much more comfortable adding my webbing. it's just like everything will get so condensed up and through here, and now this just makes my life easier. So this is going to be my front panel here. Basically about the length of the tape down here is what I'm going to overhang along the bottom to give myself some extra room in the event of any fraying. And so what I need to do is lay my webbing to where it's not going to go past my base and where it will take up the least amount of room here for this pocket and look good and match on both sides. So that's not too crazy of an order. So I marked where my base will end, and I'm going to measure over, let's see, 2 1/4. No, I'm going to start down here. I'm going to make a mark at 2 inches. And that is where I'm going to lay my tape or my webbing. The outside edge of my webbing will be aligned on that 2-inch mark. And then I'm going to measure 2 1/4. So 2 inches down here to 2 1/4 up here. And that is where I want to tape my webbing into place on all 4. And then I'm going to double check and make sure that they all line up well and then stitch them into place. Okay, to test everything, I'm just going to lay the panels right sides together, and then I'm just ensuring that they measure the same width in. Now it's not going to be as apparent along the bottom because the base will be there, but it looks pretty good. And then up here looks good as well. The other thing that you want to check is that they are the same height. So mine seem a little bit off. It seems, yeah, so I have one overhanging a little bit farther than another. So I'm going to tweak that before I stitch everything. Now back to the machine we go. Before we do that though, we do need to mark where we're going to stop. We're going to come up and then we have to go straight across, then back down, but we need to mark where we're going to go straight across here. So I am going to go at 1.5 inches. That will get me up and over this join here where the pocket and the webbing intersect, but it'll give me enough room to fold this back and out of the way whenever I'm attaching my pieces together. So we're back in the same predicament with not having a way to mark. So I'm just going to do the clip situation again. You do whatever you're comfortable with. Now we're ready. Stitch up, across, and back down. You can do a double stitch line if you'd like. I'm going to be stitching 1/8 of an inch in, and then I'm going to see how I feel about everything. I might do a double line, I might not. I will at some point be attaching rivets up in this general area as well, so that is something else that I'm going to keep in mind. We have been graced with the presence of Sir Salvador Crinkus the Ginger Magnificent, Mr. Fluff himself. He is the firstborn in this family, and that's why he got that fancy name. But anyway, so we got everything all stitched up. It's really interesting to me. I clearly did something a little bit funky on my pocket here, because if you look closely, which I'm sure if I never pointed this out, probably wouldn't pick up on it. But first of all, what triggered me into realizing it is see how much closer my stitch line is on this side, whereas this one looks nice and centered. This is what we wanted. But I noticed that it did the same thing over here, which I thought was pretty curious. So I started investigating, and you can see there's the pocket comes up higher on this side as well as this side. But you saw me measure it. I did my 2 inch to 2 1/4. So I'm not really sure what happened, but it did it on both. So I guess consistency, you know, A for effort on that. But yeah, just something weird. Thought that I would point that out. Another thing, I brought my tape up a little too high on the back here, and I tried to peel it off, and it won't peel off. So if you do get this Aria webbing, just be aware that you cannot peel tape off of it once it's stuck to it. So because of that, I think I'm going to rectify the situation by adding a couple of rivets here and here, which isn't a bad idea anyways, because on bags like this, whenever people are using them, the first stitches to pop are these that are right here in the corner. And that is because whenever it gets pulled on really hard, generally speaking, this is from the angle that it's getting pulled at, and so those pop. So to put rivets up here is a great idea because the rivet will be the first line of defense before it even gets to the stitching here. The other option that I was considering doing was putting a rivet right on the edge where the pocket is, but because of this a little bit shifty nature, I don't really want to draw the eye that much to it. So let's install some rivets. I've got some little short stubby guys here. These are 8mm caps by 5mm posts. These are really great for not very thick items, but you want a nice fat cap. And then I have my big daddies here, 9mm by 7. I'm going to kind of test out and see which one I like best. And I'm going to attempt to not pierce or not have to cut through the webbing because it does like to fray so much. I want to avoid that if I can. And what I like to do on woven webbings is take an awl or something sharp and you go through the weave and poke, and then we'll punch a hole in the cork itself and then put the rivet through that. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. Now I'm going to grab this template set again that I used earlier, and I'm going to use, remember it's these holes are supposed to appear, so just imagine that that's correct, but I'm going to use that. So I'm going to lay it out on my webbing here, and then I can mark where I need my holes, my rivets to be. And because I'm going to be covering these up, I don't mind using pen on this. I apologize if you see the back of my head. And so I'm just lining up this bottom edge here of the template on that stitch line that I made. Okay, so right there and right there. Okay. So I just shoved my pen right through the webbing, and I was able to mark on the cork. I'm gonna do the same over here. Okay, so now I'm just going to repeat that for all 4 and then add my rivets. Alrighty, we got our rivets all set into place. They're looking good, looking snazzy. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is set the base in place, and I'm going to do that for both the exterior and the lining at the same time. And so it's pretty straightforward. But if you need to give yourself the visual cue, you can mark on your exterior and your lining, for that matter. You can mark where the base is supposed to start and stop. That is shown on the pattern piece. I did that previously. So I'm just going to lay this guy here and then clip it. It's making a fun sculpture with my clips earlier. Let's see, get that guy going. Now, I definitely have been using a 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout this entire bag, so I'm going to continue that even on the base. This pattern, and I think most Noodlehead patterns, you use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, but I like to use a 1/4. It's just what I'm acclimated to. It's the size of my presser foot, yada yada. So I will be using a 1/4 inch. So because of that, whenever I am stitching my base to my exterior, I'm going to stop about a 1/4 inch in. I'm going to stop my stitch line a 1/4 inch in right there, because what that is going to do is going to give us the runway that we need to attach our base to the bottom or to the side panel later on. So if that's confusing, that's fine. Just do as I say, not as I do. Well, do as I say and as I do. How about that? You guys just need to listen. Just kidding. Do whatever you want. But whatever seam allowance you're using, you need to make sure that you are mirroring that here. So because I'm using a 1/4, I'm going to stop my stitch line here at a 1/4 inch. This one's in place, and then I'm going to bring my other exterior, and I'm going to, once I get this side done, I'm just going to flip and repeat it and attach it there. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now on my lining, I am going to leave a birthing hole. So this birthing hole here is 7 inches. It's actually a little bit smaller because I had to come in. So this is about 6 inches. Now this bag has a lot of interfacing. It's got a lot going on, and it's going to be a bit of a bear to get through a 6-inch hole. So I'm going to leave a nice wide birth hole here on the bottom that I will later pull through the pocket and close up. So I'm going to lay this, clip this into place. I am going to find my center here. This guy is a lot easier being able to fold it like that. Find my center there, and then here. And I am going to leave my birthing hole on the same side as my zipper pocket. I'm going to do the same thing on this base that I did on this one, but I'm actually gonna make this one a little bit bigger. I'm going to enlarge all of my seam allowances for the interior, so that way I get a nice snug fit. So I'm doing a 1/4 inch here, so I'm gonna probably do a 1/2 inch on the inside, because I never work in a 1/2 inch. Let me go ahead and mark that. So as a general rule, I always up my seam allowances for lining, so that way I get a nice tight fit. I don't like a baggy lining. It drives me nuts. So 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here. That's where I'm going to start and stop my stitch line to give myself that same runway to make my base in this section. And a note before we move on, if you want to do another zipper pocket, or if you want to do slip pockets, pen pockets, whatever, a water bottle holder, you want to do that now before we go any farther. I think I like my bags to just have one interior zipper pocket, but this bag does lend itself to have enough space to put some slip pockets over here if you want to do that. So if you do, go for it. Yeah, so here's this guy. I thought that it could be cool to rivet through the bottom, or if you have purse feet, this would be a really great place to put them, is through your excess webbing, just to lock everything into place down there. And then here we have the lining, and then here's my birthing hole. And of course, I am working not in the exact written pattern form. She has you attach your lining to your zipper sandwich much earlier before you add the base, but it's kind of 6 one way, half a dozen to the other at this point because you don't top stitch until the very end anyhow. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to flip my, what's this guy? My webbing handle out of the way, and then clip here to create my zipper sandwich. Now, because I'm already basted in place, this is going to be a cinch to get going. So I'm happy that I did that earlier. And then now over here with the trailing zipper tail, the pattern says to go 1.5 inches in. And I think I'm going to do about 1.25 inches in because the bag is smaller. I don't want a huge gap here along this tail end. So I'm going to do 1.25 inches. And then because I'm only doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance as well, that, you know, it kind of will all come out in the wash. It's so funny. Lauren Mormino says that I speak in idioms, and I think she's right. I never noticed it before, but I always have some sort of saying for something come out in the wash being one of them. Every time I'm with her, she reminds me. I'm like, oh, there's one. There's one. It's kind of funny. Okay, just repeating this on this side over here, and then we're going to go to the machine and stitch in place. Of course, I'll be using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you can do whatever you would like. And when you're sewing the tail, you want to pull it down and out of the way. If you've ever made any of my patterns, you'll be really familiar with this technique, but if you haven't, you just want to gently pull on it to move it out of the way and out of your stitch line, but you don't want to fold it, because if you do, it'll create a fold in the zip tape, and you don't want that. Trust me. So this is what we are looking at, and now we're going to pull these pieces. We're going to separate the exterior from the interior. I'm going to start by lining up my side seams here. Now we're going to be top stitching at the end all the way around the entire top perimeter. This is another one of those things when it comes to writing patterns, whenever you're making it, you could easily top stitch these as you go. It's not going to make that big of a difference in the end look, but some people find it easier to top stitch at the end. If you have a machine that can handle the bulk, that's totally fine. If you don't have a machine that can handle bulk, you can hammer those edges down, or you can just skip the really fat side seams altogether. It's totally up to you. If you were to top stitch before laying your sides together, then you're gonna have indents in at the top, and I don't personally mind that. Some people do, so it's up to you. What did we say earlier? It's all up to your creativity and your preferences. So I'm gonna, excuse me, tuck these tails in here and then just continue on, match up my sides. And then repeat this for the other side. All right, we're all ready to go. And now we're just going to go and stitch down the sides. I'm going to do my 1/4 inch on the exterior, and then as I cross this threshold here, I'm going to bring it in and taper it into a 1/2 inch down here at the bottom so that these ends line up. And then after we do that, we're going to do our side seams here, and then we'll be cooking with gas. Idiom. Alrighty, so we have it all done, ready to go, and now what we're going to do is connect our base to our side seams here. So after you trim up all your threads, grab a big pair of scissors, unless your snips can handle it. You're going to grab your big scissors, where are mine? Right here, and we need to snip into the main panel right next to these stitches that we did earlier. So we're going to snip right up to them, not through them. Do not snip through the stitch, but snip through the main panel, not through the base. And I'm just doing the 1/4 inch because that's what my seam allowance is, but if you did the 1/2 inch, make sure you're snipping a 1/2 inch. Repeat for all of the sides. All right, and then now we are going to fold. You see how it just flattens right out? As soon as you fold this side seam, it'll flatten right out and lay exactly where it should, or it should do that. I've definitely, you know, made bags where it doesn't work out that easily, but today, I guess, is a good sewing day because look at how good that's behaving. This is not usually how it goes for me. So I'm going to clip, and I'm going to stitch with my base side down so that I can see exactly where I need to start and stop. I want to start and stop right here. I want to get as close as possible to this corner here so that way I don't have a hole in this section. So I'm going to do that on both my base, or both of my extras, and then repeat that for my lining as well. So I just went to turn off the camera and I realized that I was on time lapse. So I hope that you enjoyed that quick turning of the bag. Anyways, I turned it right side out. I was careful to push out on my base here. You can roll it to get it exactly where you want it to be. And then I did the test fit and I was talking about how it's baggy in there and I don't love that. So what I'm going to do when I'm stitching up this birth hole is I'm going to take a nice wide, probably a fat 1/2 inch seam allowance to try to eat up some of that excess that was down in there. And then I'm going to shove it all back in and do another test fit before I close up the second birth hole here. So yeah, let's go for it. I just got these little tags. I want to put one in here in the bottom. Alrighty, so I just did a test fit off camera just because no need to put you through all that. And it fits a lot better. This bag will definitely need to be ironed after all of this maneuvering that I'm doing to it. And hopefully that'll help with the interior. Also, top stitching will definitely give it a nice crispy look. So that's what it's looking like so far. I slid my little tag in there. I'm not sure if you caught that, but I almost forgot, and it's a little askew, but you know, aren't we all? Okay, so last thing before I top stitch is I'm going to pull this pocket up and out and close this up as well. And then I'm just going to top stitch around the whole top edge. So I will do that in one fell swoop when I'm back over at the machine. But for now, let's get this folded over. So because we left this 1/2 inch gap here, what should happen, what I love about doing this technique, is whenever you pull, you see it automatically likes to fold over. That Decaville light gives it a very definite edge to fold over on. And so I will just focus on one side first. Toss a couple clips on that side. And then turn this around, let it, you know, pull it so that it's taut over that Decaville light, and then start on one edge and line everything up and clip into place. So it's more work up front, cutting all the different sizes of interfacing and pockets, but it makes the end much easier. It comes together really nicely, and it reduces so much bulk in through here. It's not going to be this huge, you know, 4 pieces of interfacing and then 4 pieces of cotton. It's not going to be 8 layers. Now it'll just be 4. It's nice and thin. Oh, so before I go, I'm going to just stitch across the bottom of this. I'm going to tuck the pocket back in and get that out of the way. And then I'm going to top stitch around my entire perimeter. And I'm just going to start at one of my side seams, and using an 1/8 inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch all the way around. I'm going to be very careful and aware of where my lining is in this process. Because we're doing this at the end, we have to top stitch the lining. If you've watched any of my videos, then you know that usually I don't do that. A big detail of this is that I'm using contrast thread, so you got to be on it on this lining top stitch. So that's what I'll be doing when I go back over there. It will be hyper speed, so pay attention. This is how it looks now. I went ahead and I hit it with a quick iron just to see how everything was laying down in here. And it definitely has a nice settling. It's looking good. I'm gonna have to do a little bit more work right here. I will say on the next one, I will definitely come in at least like up here in this top section. Instead of tapering it from the 1/4 inch to the 1/2 inch, I will immediately bump it to be a lot bigger of a seam allowance just to avoid this in the future. If it wasn't the type of bag that has this thick base, I would have pulled it back out and pulled the side seam in more, but it is a bear to do with that base, and I don't think overall it's going to be an issue. I think once we get the zipper all set up and done, it'll allow this to rest. And yeah, anyways, I'm rambling, shocker. We are going to add our zipper pull and then our zipper end cap. Okay, awesome. And then now I can decide if you want to take more of the tail off, you can. I like that length. I think that that's perfectly fine. And it'll be fine if it's tucked in the end, which is generally what I do when the bag is complete. So then it looks the same. But so to finish off my ends here, I like to take a piece of 1/4 inch double stick tape, stick it to the wrong side of the tape here, the zipper tape, right there on the edge, just like so. Peel and then fold it into 1/3. I'm not particular with which side I start with. And so it's going to look something like that along the bottom. And grab your end cap. Now mine are nice and narrow. I prefer this look. They do make really big honkers. And I'm talking about zipper end caps. Get your mind out of the gutter. And slide that on there. If you want to, you can definitely put glue down in there. I find that it's more than stable, or secure rather, without the glue, but you do whatever makes you feel comfy. We're going to put this screw into the bottom. Now for years I made the fabric end strap. What am I trying to say? I made the fabric piece that covered up the zipper ends, and I was constantly slipping and sliding. My stitches never looked good. I couldn't get a consistent look on them. Once I discovered these zipper end caps, game over. I love these guys. I use them on everything. I feel like it really classes it up. It really seals the deal with all the really nice hardware. So I think that's my preferred go-to. A little bit of that rogue tape down in there. All right, so the last thing that we need to do before making the crossbody strap is we need to attach the hardware. So I'm going to be using the D-rings that I sell on my website, and there's 2 options. So I can lay them flat, or not flat, but I can bend them to go around to follow the curve of the bag like this. So they would look something like that. Or I can bend them to come up around the top edge. And in looking at the bag, I didn't think that there was going to be enough of a lip, or enough of like a edge here to constitute doing that and have it look good. But now that the bag is done, I definitely think that that's possible. And I think that's the route that I'm going to go. So I'm going to bend my hardware. I do this in a lot of my videos. I will link it down below, but I'm going to bend it around this ruler to create a nice edge and then attach it right here through the side seams. How cute. So another thing that you can do with the zipper end is you can put it right through there and then it'll stick out. But again, you can always tuck it right back down. And then, of course, if you don't want to carry this in the crook of your elbow, you can use the crossbody strap. Yeah, so let's get that made. To make the strap, I have all of my supplies here. I have 55-inch long piece of webbing. You can make yours smaller or larger. I find that 55 inches is a nice mix for all body types, and that's pretty much the standard that I cut all of my crossbody straps to be. I have 2 lobster clasps and a strap adjuster, my rivets, my rivet press, and then I'm going to be doing a cork overlay to cover up all of the raw edges. So I went ahead and I cut those, and I top stitched in keeping with the theme of the exposed stitching on the brown. I wanted to do that on here as well because it's all about the details. So to get started, so these are, because I'm using 1.5 inch webbing, I cut my strips to 4.5 inches long by 3/4 of an inch wide. And then I nipped my corners, and then I top stitch 1/8 all the way around, which is purely for looks. It does nothing for the actual structure at all. I just wanted it to look cool. So I'm going to put some 1/2 inch double stick tape on the wrong side of both of these little cork overlay pieces. And now a note about this, you don't have to do these overlays. We'll be folding this under double, so the raw edge will be encased either way, but I just like the way that it looks. I think it's a fun little detail, and it adds, if you want to do like a pop of color, accent color, this is a fun spot to do it in that would normally be overlooked. So because this is fraying so much, I'm going to trim, and then I want to see if it'll burn. Let's see. It will. Okay, so there's obviously some polyester or nylon in this because it's singeing nicely, and I'm not going to worry about burning it until it will never fray again, just enough to work with. I'll do that to this side here. Okay. Get all the fuzzies out of the way. There we go. All right, so now to get started, we are going to grab one short edge or one raw edge of our strap, and then our strap slide. We're going to go up and over the center bar here. And I'm going to pull through about 1 inch or so, 1.5 inches. I'm going to fold over about 1/2 inch, because as you can see, I'm just eyeballing it all. And then I'm going to fold and give myself enough leeway here that this hardware is not going to get in my way when I'm laying my cork overlay piece. So just get it situated where everything is nice and straight and it's laying correctly. And then once you do that, I should have taken my paper off, but you need to peel the paper off of this. And now we're going to start on the section where, let's see, I always forget. So we're going to start where the fold is, and I'm going to lay this, leaving about a scant 1/8 inch right here, and then wrap around. And I want it to be tight, but I'm not pulling on anything. I want it to maintain its shape, but I don't want to flex it in either direction. So it should look something like this. And then now what I'm going to do is punch a hole right through right here. You can do 2 holes if you want to. I'm just going to do 1. Just right down the center. Oh my goodness, it's a lot of layers there. There we go. Yay. All right, take a long rivet. You want it to go through every piece without struggling, and then rivet that into place. So this is what it should look like when it's all set. And so now with the wrong side of the strap facing up, you're going to navigate to this end here, take one of your lobster clasps, slide it on, and you want the hardware to be facing the opposite direction. So you want the flat bar facing you. Slide it all the way back through, find your hardware and slide this other end up and over that center bar once again. Make sure it's not twisted. See, I've got some twisting going on here. There we go. And then when you ensure that it's not twisted, you're going to find this end and slide this hardware on. Again, the clasp is heading toward the outside. And then we're going to repeat that same process that we did over here. We're just going to fold over about 1/2 inch and then fold over as well, or again. So that's what it looks like on the sides. And then, once again, peel, wrap, rivet. Cute. I hope y'all enjoyed the first video of 2025. Be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. And I'll see you back here real soon. Later.